We are living in a world where AI can do many of the things people have been doing, thus creating an opportunity for us to create and do something new. Not understanding this transition can leave us unnecessarily exposed to risk. Today's guest is Howard Getson. Howard is the president and CEO at Capitalogix. He runs an algorithmic hedge fund and the data science company that powers it. Capitalogix created a revolutionary financial technology platform that uses adaptive AI to maximize performance with real-time insights. His prior company, Intelligent Control, which he founded in 1991, was an Inc. 500 company and won an IBM Lotus Beacon Award for Best Business Application. Howard is currently on the advisory council of the Hastings Center, a bioethics and AI research institute. Mr. Getson earned a BA in psychology and philosophy from Duke University, his MBA in finance from Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management, and his JD from Northwestern University Law. I'm your host, Chris Parker, and this is the Easy Prey Podcast. Howard, thank you so much for coming on the Easy Prey Podcast today.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm looking forward to this.
I know a whole bunch of people who have been on your podcast before, people like Chris Voss, Bob Cialdini. We're both friends with Stefan Spencer, so we have some interesting friends in common.
Yep, some great guys and good episodes to listen to. So can you give a little bit of background about who you are and what you do?
So my name's Howard Getson. I'm the CEO of a company called Capitalogix. And if I was on an airplane, I would describe it differently because I'd want people not to pay attention and let me sleep. But I run an AI company that actually builds the AI that runs hedge funds. But then we also do other things and other joint ventures in different spaces like medicine and a Fitbit for pets, some interesting different ways of leveraging AI or amplified intelligence to create results.
That's cool. So how would you define amplified intelligence versus artificial intelligence? Is there a differentiation there?
So I'm a strategic coach guy. So I don't know if you know Dan Sullivan and Strategic Coach, but it's a terrific program. And one of the concepts that he has is it's called the bigger future. And it's about being able to think about an idea big enough that it's going to last 25 years. What are you willing to devote 25 years to? And I realized as an entrepreneur that I keep focusing on technology. AI is a technology. Very few technologies last 25 years. But what somebody gets from it, the human nature side of it, is less likely to change. And in a sense, people are interested in things like AI or automation because they want to amplify intelligence. They want to go from guessing to knowing. They want to make better decisions, take smarter actions, continually improve performance. So amplified intelligence is something that I believe for the next 25 years will be a great compass heading, because as more and better data, computers get faster and become quantum. I think for the next 25 years of my business career, and I'm approaching 60, so hopefully that'll, be an exciting full 25 years. But I believe amplified intelligence is something that will cross many industry boundaries, and it's something that is investable, meaning it's inevitable, but the consequences are uncertain. So even though we know it's going to happen, we don't know what it really means. And so there's incredible volatility and opportunity in there for an entrepreneur to find places to add value.
And that's the neat thing that I see about the artificial intelligence, amplified intelligence is, what kind of value can it bring to our lives, and how can it impact our health and wellness in terms of, are we working 90 hours a week versus less?
But I like to go backwards before you go forwards. So you look old enough that you probably remember the mid-90s.
Yep.
When the internet was about to be really big. And there was a company run by Steve Case called AOL. And AOL used to put floppy disks on outside covers of magazines, and then later it became CDs. And I can't tell you how many AOL discs or CDs I had, and you can probably still hear in your head, "You've got mail."
Mm-hmm.
So in the mid '90s, I knew the internet was going to be big. Did you think the internet was going to make it big?
Yes, but not to the extent that it did.
So here's the thing: even if you did, would you have bet money that CompUSA would go out of business?
No, they're
Oh,
foundational to who the internet was.
yeah, wouldn't you think that would be something that you would do more of, not less of? Or that, hey, the internet's going to get big, so record stores are going to go away. What? Well, wait a minute. People are going to want to buy a $130,000 car on the internet without actually like driving it. What? Wait, the car company is going to send updates to the car like a transformer so it gets new features over that thing called the internet. So this is that thing where people are really good at understanding there's a turning point coming, but they're not really good at knowing how to time it or to understand the implications. This is why investing is so hard. But on the other hand, think about three technologies. By the way, not just for you. I'm gonna ask you to answer me, but everybody on the podcast, this is a great thing to think about. That it's going to make you money if you do it. Think about three technologies that already exist. That means there's no uncertainty about, can somebody build it? It exists. This technology is there, but you know that it's going to terraform an industry that you care about or know about in the next 3 to 5 years. So I'll let you answer. Just pick a couple ideas just off the top of your head.
I think one that's been proven and I think is potentially a bigger shift than people realize is remote work.
That's great. By the way, AI could be one. Electric vehicles,
Yep.
The ability to read and write DNA or print organ tissue, blockchain,
Yep.
right? Not necessarily cryptocurrency, but blockchain. All right, so here's the second question. What technology hasn't been fully invented, but you think it's inevitable? Meaning, like, it's not really, is it gonna be invented, but it's when will it really happen so that it's truly usable? I'll give you an example, like quantum computers,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, I don't believe that there's really any question whether that will be a thing. The question is, when will it be a thing? And then later is, in what does it really mean? But think about a couple emerging technologies that really could change everything in industry.
I think if you can have clean energy without waste, so you can spend and exhaust as much energy as you want to, and it has little or no environmental impact.
All right, so I'm going to tell you generalized AI, where AI is now in devices. And not only that, how about fully autonomous vehicles? That's in a sense a version of autonomous AI. But think about this. If vehicles were truly autonomous, and we're to the point where I'm talking about not just Tesla has self-driving right now. I'm talking about a generation beyond this where they're really autonomous. They can deal with unknown, unseen situations, all sorts of stuff. You know that there's going to be sensors in the cars that talk to each other, right?
Yep.
There's got to be sensors in the road, on the infrastructure, the overpasses. There has to be some way for the system to know about all the components and parts of the system. Well, so the fact that I know that fully autonomous vehicles is coming means that I can have an investment thesis that says, wow, this whole new place is a giant green field. Another thing is, who's going to own the data? Well, by the way, think how much data there will be. So if there's going to be that much data, there's going to be another need. So my real point here is that even though people knew the internet was going to be big, they didn't think about the consequences. Yeah. And the other important thing they didn't think about is, what role were they going to play? I have a picture of Cassius Clay, who later was known as Muhammad Ali, and he's standing over Sonny Liston. And it's a classic photo from Sports Illustrated. And in a sense, it really represents kind of the new world versus the old world. And I use it in my office to tell a story. I say that this is the new world versus the old world. You had a classic brawler in Liston, and then Cassius Clay, soon to be Muhammad Ali, floats like a butterfly, stings like a bee, was something totally different, right? But you don't have to be the new world or the old world. You don't see it in the photo, but there was a referee, and the referee got paid during this fight to, in a sense, negotiate, keep things fair between the old world and the new world. You don't see it, but there was a promoter who didn't care who won. He cared about the gate and the fact that he could do another one of these. There were announcers that were broadcasting the fight. There was the guy who took the picture. So as these things are happening, you don't have to be the person who invents the new technology. You don't have to be the person who's trampled by it. But how is your unique ability going to all of a sudden find opportunity in an imagined future that's likely? And so it's not just what's going to happen or when it's going to happen. It's really about what are you going to make it mean? What are you going to do? And how does that impact who you are, who you choose to be, and what you choose to stand for or create?
So, I mean, do you see particular industries or occupations kind of you're not necessarily in the way of upcoming technology, but you're going to be steamrollered by AI?
Well, it's funny. I was just interviewed in a documentary about AI, and they thought they were asking me like this really tough question. And it was, what happens when AI gets smarter than us?
That's always the question.
It's already smarter than us. I mean, what? It's not smarter than us at everything, but it's smarter than us about anything. Meaning, any specific thing that I want it to do, I can make it do something, but I can't make it do everything yet. Yeah. Even in our system, if you saw some of what we do, it looks like magic. But almost every new technology looks like magic until you understand the science behind it. And what you'll see is we have thousands, millions of little algorithms, techniques. And even our most impressive best thing isn't like a human. It would be profoundly autistic. It's good at what it's good at, but it's not empathetic. It doesn't understand what the other bots are doing.
It's a specialist versus generalist.
Even with specialists in our company, it's hard to get the children to play nicely with each other. How do you get hundreds or thousands of bots to understand what others are doing, and then to recognize that some of them are not friendly and I can't trust them? So I have to make them aware, but then I have to say, if somebody asks you a question, do you answer? Yeah. All right. This is, by the way, my mother called me. This is not a joke. My mother called me and said, I think I made a mistake. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, I got this letter from PayPal, and they said that somebody had scammed me and they needed my bank account information to check. And I said, Mom, you didn't. She did. Not only that, she downloaded software that let them control the computer. And get this, he was so nice, he was willing to blank her screen so she didn't have to watch all this and be confused while it was happening.
Oh, way too common. Way too common.
Yeah. And the thing is that technology is getting good so fast. There's no question that, I just had a granddaughter. I hope that she understands math and statistics and data science, because I think it's going to become increasingly important. And then as soon as I said it, I'm like, but by the time she's old enough to do it, what are the chances that a human is doing the basic coding? I think almost none. In fact, what are the chances that she's actually going to learn how to drive a car? The only reason to learn how to drive a car 20 years from now is going to be nostalgia, and wouldn't it be cool to think that you could? But how many times have I pushed a plowing shears through a field? The humans think that we used to act like machines, and now machines are starting to act like humans. But humans have always acted like humans. The reason you pushed a plowing shear through the field is nobody else was going to do it for you, and you wanted to eat.
Yeah.
And as technology raises the level of what's possible, it frees the human to say, oh, what do I want to do? What should I do? What could I do? What would actually create the most value and impact? And it frees you to lift your chin and do something better. So back in the old days, the level of technology wasn't as impressive. And again, we think humans acted like beasts of burden or machines. No, that's what it meant to be human when that's all you could do. As the machines or the technology raises the level of possibility of what you could rely on to produce productive output, then it frees the human to start to imagine and do better things. So as you get generalized AI or amplified intelligence, as you get fully autonomous vehicles, as you get digital omniscience, a mixed reality metaverse, the ability to have DNA computing and storage or quantum computing, green technologies, brain computer interfaces, lab grown meat or organs, business in space, the world's going to change.
Yeah.
But humans are still going to do work. We're going to continue to find things to do the same way that there are still farmers. They're just doing different things.
They're running combines instead of running bowls and plows.
Yeah.
And so it makes you, like you were talking a little bit, and this is kind of a step back. You were talking about the AI being able to deal with the data that we're giving it. And who should I trust and who should I not trust? Is that a problem that you see with future AI, is intentionally feeding bad data to the AI in order to poison the results?
Well, so since the beginning of time, isn't misinformation? Didn't Sun Tzu write about it in The Art of War? Didn't you just see it with all the bot farms in Russia trying to create misinformation? There's garbage in, garbage out, nothing in, nothing out. But the best way to confuse people is to get them to focus on the wrong thing. If you had an AI system and you wanted to scam somebody, how hard would it be to create automation to create a Reddit post or a Facebook post or an Instagram post or a LinkedIn post that said, hey, I just made this much money with this. Take a look at the momentum. I just saw this indicator do this. And then all of a sudden, 14 other people says, yeah, me too. Plus, look at this. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, this sounds great. And by the way, you just described the GameStop phenomena that just, right? But the thing is that it's so easy for a technology to manipulate stuff like this.
Or even humans to manipulate it.
But the point is,
like GameStop.
Believing that technology will not learn how to lie is silly. Technology is going to learn how to lie. Humans will use it to lie, but technology is going to realize as it looks at different strategies that lying is a strategy with a positive expectancy. And so what I say is it's almost like antivirus or anti-malware. It used to be based on specific patterns that it was saying, oh, I found this variant. They can't do that anymore. They have to look for certain behavior because there's too many There's an almost infinite way to do those things. So you have to look for other stuff. So I look at AI as signal versus noise. And how do you recognize what is signal and what is noise? And even if you think about the difference between you playing chess and a chess master playing chess, the truth is you both have a brain that weighs within a reasonably small number of standard deviations what the other person's brain weighs. You have a certain number of brain cells. The thing is that humans can focus on 7 things plus or minus 2 at any point in time. And so if you look at the chessboard and you're saying something like, the horsey goes up 2 and over 1, well, you just used your cycles. And if the chess master is saying, so I can ignore that whole part of the board because this pawn right here is actually the key, even though they might not be smarter, they were able to use their resources in a much more targeted way.
Yeah.
So signal and noise is actually saying AI is incredibly inefficient when you're processing things that doesn't matter or that have already been discovered. And so being able to figure out how to use the available cycles or for potential benefit and to actually be efficient, effective, or certain at getting it is very different than saying, hey, there's this new technology that creates all this possibility, but it's really hard to do. And frankly, 60 to 70% of the cost and difficulty in any AI problem or challenge or opportunity is data. And actually, I'll just tell you, in my own company, I've got dozens of kind of PhD quant rocket scientist types that are far smarter than me about stuff like this. We stopped doing the data. And you go, wait a minute, but you're an AI company. And the thing is that we're really good at AI insights. And you need really good data in order to have really good AI insights. But the truth is it was way too costly and just to be okay at those things. And instead, I wanted to hire somebody that was outstanding at this thing that's so important. If I know it's important, I don't want to be mediocre. Mediocre is expensive. I want to be outstanding. I want to be better than outstanding. And so I wasn't going to get there myself. By the way, that's actually a good reason to use AI is you want AI to create new opportunities, not to do what you did so you can do nothing. It's the lost opportunity cost that says, I need AI to do what I used to do so that I'm free to imagine something better. Mm-hmm. I want to free the human to increase value. We'll find a way to then use an autonomous platform to scale the opportunity. But you have to understand what you want to scale before you do it. There's kind of a model in my head. And it goes kind of like this. Capabilities, prototypes, products, platforms. Sounds simple, but I don't try to predict technology. I try to understand human nature. And a capability is like an individual Lego. If you have one Lego and it does something, the first thing a simple human is going to do with a new capability is say, does it help me do what I already do just better?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, you say, so what, who cares? Right? So in a sense, if I'm investing in technology, I think about what capabilities do people care about? And if they don't care, why would I invest? You're not going to get anybody to spend time, money, energy, whatever. But there's a different kind of capability where if you give it to them, instead of it satisfying their need and they simply say, okay, thanks. But instead, if they go, could it do this? What about that? The capability that's worth investing in is the one that has hidden energy that makes people go to stage 2, which is a prototype, which is where they say, what could I do or what should I do? It's not what it already does. It's what it makes possible. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So a capability is something that you're doing yourself and you're evaluating yourself. A prototype is typically where you and maybe a team is trying to accomplish something, but you're fitting 2 or 3 Legos together and you're going, oh, this is better. But as soon as you do that better, you want more. When Elon Musk first saw what would become the Tesla on a racing track, and the engineer is saying, this is going to be an electric car, he probably said something like, but can it go 300 miles? Because if not, we're screwed. Or you're always thinking about the constraint. It's not about the technology. It's about human nature. If somebody gets this, what are they going to want? And each one of these stages is a 10x scaling opportunity. So as an entrepreneur, I'm constantly thinking about the things that exist and the things that are likely to exist, which is where we started the conversation, and to say, so what capabilities are going to become products? Now, a product is where somebody you don't know achieves the result you do know using the capability, right? So that's what a product is. Again, a prototype is you and people you know doing something you know. But a product is people you don't know being able to do the thing you know. And then a platform is even bigger, and that's where people you don't know are using this capability to do things you didn't anticipate. And then, so in a sense, it becomes the foundation that new stuff is built upon. So when you think about Tesla, it started with that battery, but that battery is going to be a whole separate energy company. Yeah. And if you think about SpaceX, it looked like a rocket, but now it's a transportation company that brings things into space at 1/20th the cost of what it used to cost to do that. So it's going to enable a whole new round of space-based business.
Starlink.
And then you look at Starlink and you say, so one will be the UPS or FedEx of the universe, and the other is going to be the AT&T or Verizon. And you realize that they're platform companies. And so the thing that used to be a product actually becomes the capability for an even bigger prototype product platform, and it's recursive and iterative. But once you start to figure out in your industry what platforms are likely to exist in the next 5 years or so, then you can start saying, so which product companies are likely to be the one responsible for the platform? And then which component capabilities are they going to need to acquire in order to make that happen? And all of a sudden, you have an investable thesis. Mm-hmm. Now you do the same thing where you think about yourself in that space and you say, if those things are happening, what do I want to do?
How's that going to change? Yeah, how is that going to change my life? What opportunities is that going to bring to me?
Yeah. So for me, I've created what to me is a very commonsensical model, but it's a little bit involved. But it basically says, look, with AI, the promise is exponential results. Nobody's going to spend the time or the money if you're not. I mean, we talked about the concept of amplified intelligence, but they're looking for exponential results. So I think there's 3 key drivers that make that happen. One is you have to have a competitive advantage. And the English word that I would substitute is more ways to win, right? If you only have one way to win, then you're hoping the future looks a lot like the past. And if it doesn't, you're screwed. Yeah. So more ways to win lets you deal with a wider range, have a bigger playbook. But if you have more ways to win, you actually need strategic certainty. You need a way to measure what's filling your cup or draining it. Otherwise, you've only created a way to distract yourself. Remember we talked about signal and noise?
Yeah.
So as people start to create more ways to win, they're actually creating their own noise. They're creating things that are going to drain their cycles of money, focus, energy, opportunity management. So there has to be some way to intelligently direct resources into the areas that have the highest expectancy score. Mm-hmm. But then you need the ability to continue to learn and grow, because in a sense, anything you've solved for happened in the past, and the world is actually happening forward. And so I call it compounding insights, but it's learning and growing. And so competitive advantage with compound insights is what produces amplified intelligence. That's how you go from guessing to knowing. There's three verbs that do this. By the way, amplified intelligence is a noun. It's a thing, right? I mean, you're searching for a thing, but how do you do it? So there's three main verbs: discover, challenge, and innovate. Discover is not the verb most people would think, but data science isn't about creating a new truth. That's often lying. It's about finding a profound truth that was hidden by noise, right? I mean, it actually makes sense. So discover is an important verb. So if you're into amplified intelligence, you have to start to think about a functional component step about what do I need to discover? How much am I willing to pay to know certain things? Then you need a second one called challenge. In scams, there's, I hear something, but is it real? So a challenge is, was it skillful or lucky? How likely is it to repeat? Was it a coincidence, or did this cause that thing? And then innovate is saying, and if I didn't find what I'm looking for, I might have to think about different ways to do it. So that's amplified intelligence. But if exponential results, you had competitive advantage and also strategic certainty, that's what produces a platform. You think of a platform as the way you automate things. That's how you go from lucky to skillful. So instead of saying, ooh, that thing worked, I actually have enough things going that I can allocate resources to the thing that's working. And there's no thing that always works, but there's almost always something that does, right? So I need something that's not just a platform. I need it to be an autonomous platform. That's because the human only has 7 things plus or minus 2 to focus on, but I can have a computer focus on so many more things. So the 3 verbs to build the platform is a noun, but the verbs are build, scale, and refine. And in total quality management, this used to be plan, do, check, act. As you start to create something, as soon as it works, you want to make it bigger, faster, more, and then it breaks. And then you have to, and so you start to say, oh, I needed clean data. Oh, wait, I needed to update the data daily. Oh, no, it's actually every hour. We ought to do it. And then soon you're to the point where you're going, no, I want this to be real time, right? And so there's plan, do, check, act, but it's build, scale, refine. But then that solves the problem you currently have. But as an entrepreneur, your business is actually, again, about the future. So the third component, the third thing is you need a sustainable edge. And that's how you go from situational to perpetual. And the 3 verbs there are grow, adapt, and fortify. And the reason is your company is growing. The customers are growing, their needs are growing. You're selling a different set of products, services, or offerings. You've got to adapt strategically, and then you've got to fortify the stuff that you thought you knew, because the truth is the thing that was the very best strategy 18 months ago might actually be hurting you now. I mean, it's true in employees all the time. The best employee in your company when you have 10 people might not even make the cut when you're at 50 or 100. And it's not that they're a bad person. It's a bad fit for where you've grown to or become. So with AI, one of the problems is you have to start to have expiration dates for some of these things that you're most proud of, because as you create more and more things that are happening automatically, everybody thinks AI is cool, but automatic stupidity is scary. Making mistakes at light speed is not good. And having something that you know worked start to lose money is scary if you don't know it's losing money. And the thing is that you know it worked. But knowing it worked is different than knowing it's working and knowing that it's useful to have in the process. But you have so many things that are automated that how do you keep track of all the things that are happening when it's no longer a human? It's hard enough to do when it's you and you're like, oh, I forgot. But if it's your team, it's like, well, you ought to have reporting systems. Well, guess what? As you start to build more and more integrated AI to do all sorts of different stuff, there's going to have to be a whole different way to audit unintended consequences, because AI is a great antidote to fear, greed, and discretionary mistakes. But this is worse. This is an unforced error that you intended. You literally decided to turn this on and leave it running.
Yeah.
And so business is going to change, but it's going to continue to rely on humans for a long time.
It's almost like you need AI to oversee and manage the AI.
Well, that's exactly what you do. No, I mean, you think you're joking, but that's
No,
literally my business. We build layers of AI, and we even use words like worker, manager, supervisor. And at the top, you almost have like an orchestra conductor who's saying, oh, I want the woodwinds. Oh, I need the percussion. Now everybody plays softly. Now everyone loud. Now just the flute solo.
and that all makes sense when you're looking at AI as a specialist. You've got a bunch of worker AIs being specialists, and then you have a supervisor AI who doesn't know how to do the work, but he knows how to manage the specialists to make sure they're producing or performing in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, if the people on your podcast wanted a PDF that showed those models that I talked about, they just have to text AI, so the AI, to 972-992-1100. So again, you just text AI to 972-992-1100, and we will give them a little presentation and PDFs that kind of show the methodology and form.
Awesome. We'll make sure to include that in the show notes. Like, the discussion of AI just leaves me with this sense of like, oh, there's just so much going on underneath, behind the scenes, around the corner, just ahead.
But it also means that there's a lot of people who have no clue. They're really well intended, but they're tricking themselves. They're not lying to you. They're lying to them. And it's because they found out about GPT-3. And so they're like, oh, my God, look what this makes possible, and I can do this. And they think that they're an AI entrepreneur. And what they're doing is they're surfing a wave. But they're not Mother Nature. They didn't create the wave, and they're not a skillful sailor. I think everybody is going to be able to leverage AI over the next 25 years. It's inevitable. Mm-hmm. And even if you don't know how, it will be doing. I mean, if you get your electrocardiogram done, an AI is going to be reading it and sending alerts to the doctor. So many places AI is going to make your life better. You won't notice.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if you're an entrepreneur or an investor, all these existing and emerging technologies present promises and perils. And what's important is not to focus on the peril like my mother watches CNN. And every time I talk to her, she's like, oh, my God, this is so terrible. And my response was, stop watching.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if she watched and instead she was like, oh, I feel so good because look how the world is growing and we've never had so many people with so much visibility, I'd feel differently. But they're using it to feel bad. So as you move to crypto, creating authenticated provenance and governance, and you say, even more regulations. What you make it mean, what you choose to focus on, and what you do, those are things that you get to do. But you are in an exponential world that is getting better at an exponential rate. And you can celebrate that it's never been easier to get more faster, or you could be frustrated that it's never been easier to get more bad data and be more confused faster. What you choose to do is up to you.
It's a perspective.
Yeah.
I think that is a great spot to leave things. Is what are we going to do with with what we have, and what's our perspective? Where are we going to look for it to take us?
Exactly. And the way to go is to text AI to 972-992-1100. And I'll tell you what, for your podcast people, I'll also add them for free to every Friday. I end up sending a list of 20 articles I found most interesting during the week. And it's typically a mix of business and kind of fun science or tech or just human interest. But that's where I would look. I mean, I spend hours and hours and hours every week as a futurist thinking about these things and sharing what I think is interesting. And I do it because I'm looking for potential collaborators who say, ooh, I'd love to use that AI platform to make what we do better. And so I'm long-term greedy, not short-term greedy, but I would love to talk to people who love the future and are trying to figure out what it means and what they can do.
Awesome. So aside from texting AI to 972-992-1100, I think I got that right.
Yeah, our website's Capitalogix, and there's a blog, but Capitalogix. But frankly, our website is bad. It's designed so that people know we exist, but I don't want people to know what we really do.
I profoundly understand exactly what you mean by that.
Yeah, but we invent AI and we figure out how to use it to build cool things based on these models that we just talked about. So
that's really cool. Howard, thank you so much for coming on the Easy Prey podcast today.
Yeah, thanks. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Easy Prey podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please share this episode with someone you know and leave a review at easyprey.com/review. Notes and a transcript of this episode with Howard Getson can be found at easyprey.com/111.